Hello there and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be analyzing and listening to a fantastic band from America, which is called America, and the track in question is of course probably the most popular track, A Horse with No Name. From the album, America as well. Look at that, talking about creativity. And on a personal note, this song happens to have a special place in my heart because it was one of the first times that I actually got blown away by the use of beautiful vocal harmonies on a rock track. So, with that being said, let's get into it. But before we go, if this is your first time on the channel, I welcome you because here we analyze the music that we love from the perspective of an active musician and professional music producer, but using language that everybody can understand in a way to expand our knowledge when it comes to music production, songwriting, and of course music appreciation. If this is your jam, let's rock and roll. Here we go. So here we go, A Horse with No Name by America.
I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was a fly with a buzz and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name because there ain't no one for to give you no pain. La 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 la
Sorry for interrupting, but you know the drill. First and foremost, what a beautiful sounding recording this is. I don't know if you could get what I was trying to draw your attention to at the very beginning of this track, because you can hear the noise coming out of the recording system at the very beginning. It's a sound similar to this, okay? And it's it's very audible if you pay attention and you know what to look for. Once this video is over, go back and play back the beginning of this particular track and pay attention to the acoustic guitar, but also there is a little bit of that noise that I showed you a few seconds ago. That's the result, in my guesstimate, of having to push the gain, which is what controls how much your microphone is going to be how reactive your microphone is going to be to the recording setup while recording, of course. Probably they pushed it to, higher than usual due to the quietness or the dynamic range of the guitar playing, because you can hear that the guitar is kind of coming in little by little in volume. I think that probably they did it while while mixing, just using the fader, pushing it upwards. Maybe that's known as riding the track, okay? But in the case of this, probably it could be even the singing microphone or the guitar itself. The one that was driven a little bit louder than usual, and you can hear that. Why am I pointing at the microphone used for recording vocals? Because his vocal style is kind of quiet, or at least in that very point of the record. Because you can hear him singing in a very kind of whisper-like vibe and tone that works marvelously well. It's an awesome sounding performance. Now, the song evolves beautifully and in very short amount of time, because we got from very quiet to a very kind of elaborated in motion kind of track that it's super catchy and kind of interesting to listen to, don't you think? It also gives you this impression of they're telling a story. It's a tale that you're actually being shown by the use of music. Very cool. Now, I didn't remember the song sounding this good, being very frank, because it's been a while since I listened to this track, and also it's probably the first time I listened to this song using this system here at the studio. Weird, I know, but whatever. Reasons, I guess. But the guitars are beautifully recorded. They sound amazing. I love how rich in character they are. You can hear every note, but also they have plenty of body to them. They are kind of, how can I put it? Yeah, weighty, if that makes sense to you. Very cool. Like it a lot. I'm going to press play once again, and please pay attention to many things. The first one, I wanted to pay attention to the use of the percussion that was introduced at the very end of this section, and see how much it cuts through the mix. By cutting through the mix, I mean how much you can hear them and how clear you can hear them, because they're doing tricks to them that are very cool. Also, pay attention to the vocals, particularly during those beautiful vocal arrangements where you got this kind of the choir like section in which the entire band is singing together, which is amazing. It's one of the reasons why I fell in love with harmonies, vocal harmonies, to be very frank with you. So yeah, pay attention to this, because try to point some of the sounds of it and describe to me in the comments, of course, if you could, how they make you feel, and if you can use words to describe the texture, how they sound to you. Okay, I'm gonna give my own opinions once this section is over. So here we go. Let's keep rocking. Here we go.
2 days in the desert sun, my skin began to turn red. After 3 days in the desert fun, I was looking at a riverbed, and the story it told of a river that flowed made me sad to think it was dead. You see, I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for to give you no pain. After 9 days, I let the horse run free, 'cause the desert had turned to sea.
Sorry for interrupting, you know the drill once again. But wow, what a beautiful display of musical prowess, don't you think? The composition became bigger, much more exciting, and you know what's the best part about it? Nothing changed harmonically speaking. It's the same chord progression, which is the sequence of notes or chords being played one after the other, and it never changes. This song is basically just the same sequence played throughout the entirety of the track for 4 minutes, and somehow we never get bored out of it. Why? Because the composition it's using great melody lines in the form of the vocals, a great use of the dynamic range. I'm gonna discuss that later, but also great use of layering techniques, which involves, of course, the use of different sounds playing together to create a bigger sound and also to add texture and layers to the song itself. Now, coming back to the question I asked you a few minutes ago. Could you tell, or could you use words to describe the sound of the backing vocals when they play together? And also, could you define how much the percussive elements, the percussions, later joined by an actual drum kit later on, it cut through the mix? I'm gonna give you my text. First, there is a silky quality to the vocal arrangement. When they are singing together, they feel like a unit, like one instrument. They are really well tuned. I can't imagine how many hours they rehearsed together to be able to sing that way. And I mind that they were able to pull this off live, because it was the style at the time. You know what I mean, right? Back in the day, musicians needed to be good musicians in order to make a living. But not anymore. Changed my mind. And tell me what you think about that statement. By the way, we're coming back to the song. It feels silky due to the beautiful breathiness of it, don't you think? And also, it's a little bit warm to the tone, to the ears, because they're not kind of screechy, right? They are not that hard hitting. They feel like they are part of the song. Now, when it comes to the percussions, you could feel them being quite in motion, and also they are pushed to the left. For the vast majority of the time, you could hear them on this side of the stereo spectrum. That's why I had this stereo spectrum analyzer on. So, with that being said, now let's take a look at the screen, because let's discuss the mix. Here we go. In front of us, we've got Decibel, which is the tool that we use to analyze music through the use of a visual medium. This section right here is what is describing or presenting to us the loudness of each of the frequencies that are part of the human hearing range. This section here is 20 hertz, which is the lowest we can hear, all the way down to 20,000 hertz, the highest we can hear, allegedly, as human beings, okay? This white line represents how loud each of these frequencies were across the record at the highest point in volume. And not surprising at all, not that much low end. This is a record from the 70s, if I recall correctly. So this is one of the trademarks. When you do this, and if you have been following the channel for a while, whenever we hit one of these mixes from this period of time, we always have this kind of tendency. Why is that? Many factors. The first one, of course, is technology. Records, particularly vinyl, among many things, they have a set amount of information that can be stored inside of them, right? And due to many reasons, super low end, loud low end, fills up plenty of that space, making or enabling somebody to record more music inside of the same vinyl disc. I'm going to put it there because there are many more things about it. But that's one thing. Secondly, people back in the day like to listen to music that was kind of, that's in my head canon. If you happen to be one of those bad boys from that era, please let me know. But in my head, people like to listen to music that felt somewhat real, if that makes sense to you. It's not overly produced, and don't get me wrong, this is highly polished. This is extremely well crafted, but it's not trying to hide the raw nature of the performance and the raw nature of the sound being recorded. So that's why we don't have this larger than life, usually found on much more modern records, particularly from the 90s onwards, a hyped up, a low end. Also, you see that our mid-range is very contained, and this is what I was mentioning before. This section over here is where you can see the richness of the low end on the guitars. Remember when I said that the guitars felt kind of hefty, kind of powerful and punchy sounding? It's due to this, because it has plenty of this fantastic low end that is very much present in the guitar recording. I can't imagine what kind of guitars they used. If you happen to know some details about that, please let me know, because that I happen to be a sucker for those details. And in my head, they sound like Martin or maybe Gibson acoustics. But we'll see. Now, high end, not that much. Why? This section over here is where we usually will find some of the more detailed sound out of electric guitars. We don't have electric guitars in this recording, and also some of the cymbals. And the cymbals in this case, when the drums joint, they're not as bright or as kind of splashy sounding, for a lack of a better term. They are there, and they have this kind of dark overtone to it, don't you think? Because they are present, but they are not like in your face, which fits the record. Makes total sense. So I assume that this is actually the result of the mixing process. Even the recording could have been, or even the cymbals used per se would be the part of the result. Now, let's take a look at the second section. This is the dynamic range analyzer, which stands for it's displaying to us first and foremost how loud a signal has been throughout time. And in this case, the signal is, of course, the song. This blue blob represents the loudness throughout time, okay? And let me take you to the first section of the song. See how quiet it was. Damn! This is very important for those of you who are not familiar with the terminology. Dynamic range stands for the relationship between the highest point in volume with the lowest point in volume of any given track throughout time, okay? And that applies also to instruments. That's why I mentioned that probably the dynamic range of the guitar player was also part of the recording. But that means that our human brain understands differently, emotionally speaking, as music based on the loudness. For example, when a sound is quiet, we tend to associate it with something more secretive, more sexy, and a little bit more introspective. But when something is louder, we, of course, are going to be drawn to it. But also, it's going to feel more exciting, more impactful, and kind of in your face. And coming back to the screen, you'll see that the beginning, the introduction to the track is kind of somber, kind of quiet, and interesting, and kind of mysterious. And then you got the introduction of the vocals. You see how little by little the song starts to catch up. Here is where the bass and the percussions joined. And see how big the jump is. I can assure you that every time that you play this bad boy, you have to go to your audio controller just to increase the output. Why? Because the track is kind of low volume, but I think it's in purpose because whenever the glorious vocal arrangement hits you and the kick and the bass kicks in and the acoustic guitars are starting to play the strumming, they hit you hard, and that's the plan. So great, and that's why you see how much the track is evolving in volume, pushing its envelope harder and harder and harder, just for it to reach a final momentum in which, bam, this is the vocal harmony, and it's the most memorable part of the song. Now, if we go to the second half of the song, you'll see that what used to be the standard, the highest point in volume, became the new standard, for it to be increased even more during the second half, the second introduction of the chorus. Gigantic. And this is the drop before the guitar solo, after the guitar solo, sorry. So this is what is giving us this, kind of release, because the tension and the emotion kept building up while the track was playing due to the increment in volume, allowing the song to hit us harder, just for us to be like, give some release, and then we get it. This is masterful songwriting at full display. Something that every single one of us musicians should learn from and aspire to. Let's continue. Let's finish off the track because this song is fantastic. And well, if you got any question, let me know in the comment section below. And also, if you happen to be enjoying what you're seeing, please like the video because YouTube is now forcing us to ask for that. So please help us with that. Let's continue. Here we go.
There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rings. The ocean is a desert with its life underground and a perfect disguise above. Under the cities lies a heart made of brown, but the humans will give no love. You see, I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for to give you no pain. La, 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 la,
What a beautiful song this is. At the ending, could you hear that particular effect that they used? I don't know if you could notice it, but while the track was playing, they kind of use one of the faders. Let's remind that this guy is the one controlling the output of the sound of the vocals, the vocal arrangement, right? And this guy is controlling an effect known as reverb. What does reverb stand for? Reverb is it's an artifact that we use or a tool that we use to recreate the sound of a space through the use of artificial methods, right? And it sounds like this. Reverb. Okay? So, what I think they did, these being the fader that controls the output of the singing voices, they copied this sound and put it inside of the circuit that creates this reverberation sound, okay? And what they did, in my opinion, is this. They pushed the vocals first, which is known as the dry signal, the one with no effect, and they backed it off while increasing the sound of the signal that actually has the effect, which is the wet signal, replacing and taking the stage over the dry signal, giving you the impression of the vocals leaving, going backward, like they are becoming less apparent to you, like if you are, they're going further and further away from you, if that makes sense. And that effect, the reverb, creates this image of distance. Does that make sense? It's difficult to explain, but I hope I could make my point, because that's something that it's part of the telling element of this track, and in music in general. Because if you think about it, a musician is somewhat of not a scientist, but is somewhat of a storyteller himself. Why? Because through music, you not only create or evoke emotions, but also you can tell tales. You can learn from tracks. You can inspire people by narrating certain adventures or certain events, with the added benefit of actually being able to promote or expose the emotional content of wherever that epic moment felt like, if that makes sense to you. I went a little bit deeper than usual, but I hope that makes sense. So, with that being said, thank you for joining, thank you for watching, and if you happen to like this video, once again, please help us by liking and leaving a like, and of course, leave a comment in the comment section down below, because that helps the channel, you don't know how much. Now, as usual, as every single time that I meet you, I gotta remind you that you should never let anybody tell you what to dream about, and remember that I will see you when I see you.